right to be God.
The story of the Universal Monsters is one of terror, imagination, and innovation. It's a story that's haunted audiences since the early days of cinema and continues to capture the dark allure of Universal Studio theme parks today. With the dark universe coming to Universal's brand new park, Epic Universe, the monsters are even more prominent than ever. Today, we'll dive into the chilling history of the Universal Monsters at Universal Studios, exploring how these iconic characters have evolved from the silver screen creatures to unforgettable theme park legends. Universal Studios first struck gold with monster films in the 1920s and 1930s, starting with The Phantom of the Opera in 1925, and followed by classics like Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, and The Invisible Man. Universal Monsters quickly became a cultural phenomenon. These movies were groundbreaking at the time, combining horror, drama, and cutting-edge special effects and makeup to establish characters who would live on in the public consciousness for generations. These monsters became synonymous with Universal Pictures, solidifying the studio's reputation as the home of horror. So it was no surprise that when Universal Studios began building its theme parks, the monsters would find a place in there too. In 1964, Universal Studios Hollywood began offering their tram tour, giving guests a peek behind the scenes of a working movie studio. Though it was not yet a full-fledged theme park, this tour included glimpses of horror movie sets and props. As the studio expanded, the idea of bringing these monsters out of the shadows emerged. By the 1980s, Universal Studios Hollywood had developed into a theme park fully. With rides and shows based on hit films, they made room for their iconic monsters. The first major Universal monster experience was the Castle Dracula show, which opened in 1980. The show transported audiences to Transylvania, where they could witness classic horror scenes brought to life. It was a sign that Universal was ready to incorporate its monsters' legacy into theme park experiences. The show would cost Universal Studios $3 million to produce, which is around $11 million today. Universal was very proud of the money that they spent and even used it as part of their marketing. The animatronic of the Phantom of the Opera was originally voiced by actor Paul Lynde, but was revoiced shortly thereafter since his voice was way too recognizable. The Incredible Hulk even made an appearance during the show due to the popularity of the TV show at the time. The Castle Dracula show would run until January 31st of 1983 to be replaced with a show based around Conan the Barbarian. When Universal Studios Florida opened in 1990, the monsters took center stage once again with the Phantom of the Opera horror makeup show, which would showcase the art of horror movie special effects from prosthetics and beyond. It was a thrilling demonstration of the techniques behind the monsters' terrifying appearances. In 1992, the Universal Monsters continued to thrive at the theme park with the Universal Monsters Live Rock and Roll Show, a high-energy musical show that featured Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Bride of Frankenstein, and the Wolfman all rocking out on stage. The show reimagined these classic characters in a more playful and concert-style setting, blending horror with humor. The host of the show would be Beetlejuice. He directs the guests to say his name 3 times, and the Universal Monsters are transformed into rock stars. The show title would eventually become Beetlejuice Rock and Roll Graveyard Review. In an interesting piece of trivia, Joey Fatone from the boy band NSYNC once played the Wolfman Wolfie in the Orlando show before officially becoming part of NSYNC.
I used to work at Universal Studios, but it was amazing because this was my stomping grounds. This is kind of where I learned. Chris Kirkpatrick sang over at the Hollywood High Tones, which is a 50s doo-wop group, and I sang it as a werewolf and Beetlejuice. Cool. So for us, this is actually how NSYNC kind of came about, because if it wasn't for Universal, I don't think the guys would have came to see what I did.
The show would last until 1999 in Hollywood and all the way to 2016 in Florida, only to be replaced with something much more horrifying. One of the most exciting events for Universal Monster fans is Halloween Horror Nights, an annual tradition that began in 1991 at Universal Studios Florida. Over the years, Universal has used this event to showcase the monsters in elaborate haunted mazes and scare zones, from The Bride of Frankenstein Lives to Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. These experiences bring visitors face to face with the classic Universal monsters, offering incredibly detailed environments that echo the haunting atmospheres of the original films. Halloween Horror Nights keeps the legacy of these monsters alive and allows future generations to experience these monsters and come face to face with them up close. Over in Hollywood, Universal would open The Mummy Returns Chamber of Doom as a walkthrough attraction to promote the second Brendan Fraser film. The attraction would take the place of another walkthrough based around a film that does have some terrifying themes, Chicken Run. The attraction would remain as The Mummy until 2004, when it would be updated to Van Helsing Fortress Dracula to promote the brand new Hugh Jackman film being released that same summer. I personally have vivid memories of going to Universal Studios Hollywood when I was a teenager and experiencing Fortress Dracula, not really knowing what I was in for. It was the first haunted house that I ever went through, and it frightened me and at the same time gave me the inspiration to learn more about these types of attractions and led me down the rabbit hole to really where I am today for my love of all things theme parks, from your traditional rides to even your haunted house attractions. As guests walk through this attraction, they would encounter creatures from the 2004 film such as Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and even a Wolfman. In 2006, the maze would be changed to the Universal House of Horrors and will remain that way until its closure in 2014. In House of Horrors, guests walk through some of Universal's classic horror characters, including the Phantom of the Opera, Dracula and his brides, the Mummy, even Chucky, the mother from Psycho, the Wolfman, Frankenstein and Igor, and even a chainsaw-wielding maniac. It would reuse many of the props and sets from the previous versions of this attraction. In 2009, Universal Studios Hollywood would debut probably one of the strangest stage shows they've ever produced, Creature from the Black Lagoon, the musical. It would be held in the same theater that Beetlejuice's Rock and Roll Graveyard Revue used to be in. The show would open on July 1st, 2009, with Julie Adams, the original leading lady, attending the premiere. The show would only last until March of 2010. In recent years, Universal has reintroduced the monsters in exciting new ways. In addition to Halloween Horror Nights, the Universal Monsters are featured in merchandise, props, themed areas across all the Universal parks, including the Universal Monsters Cafe at Universal Studios Florida. This location immersed visitors in an atmosphere filled with monster memorabilia and old movie posters, celebrating the cinematic legacy of the monsters. The cafe would end up closing in May of 2022 to make way for the Minions Cafe from Despicable Me. The presence of the Universal Monsters isn't just set to the United States. Universal Studios Japan and Universal Studios Singapore have featured attractions, scare zones, and shows centered around these characters. In 2024, after many years of speculation, Universal would officially announce that the monsters would be getting their own dedicated land at their brand new Epic Universe theme park opening in 2025. The new area, called the Dark Universe, is set in the dreary Darkmoor Village, where Victoria Frankenstein, the great-great-granddaughter of Henry Frankenstein, has continued to follow in her family's footsteps of monster making. Her current experiment, intended to bring all of the legendary monsters under her control, backfires when Dracula starts a revolt. Elsewhere in the village is the Camp of Mystics that study the curse of the werewolf, an old windmill that has become the headquarters for a local group of monster hunters, and even a steakhouse run by Dracula's familiars. The flagship attraction, Monsters Unchained: The Frankenstein Experiment, is promoted to be one of the most technologically advanced attractions ever created in any theme park, just in the vein of Universal's previous work with The Adventures of Spider-Man and The Wizarding World of Harry Potter. The new land is planned to open with the rest of the park on May 22nd, 2025. The influence of the Universal Monsters is undeniable, from their terrifying appearances at Halloween Horror Nights to their permanent mark on park attractions within the brand new Epic Universe. These creatures are woven into the identity of Universal Studios. They represent Universal's legacy of horror and innovation, embodying a blend of nostalgia and timeless terror. From the spooky thrills of Castle Dracula to the advanced attractions of today, the monsters will forever roam the fog-filled streets of Universal's theme parks. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the history of the Universal Monsters in the Universal Studio theme parks. If you are new here, don't forget to like, subscribe to our channel, and also let us know in the comments below who your favorite Universal monster is. My personal favorite is the Creature from the Black Lagoon, as you can tell from this display within my collection room. Until next time, beware of what lurks in the dark, and always keep an eye out for the monsters.